Welcome to 28 Days and Beyond, where we reflect and celebrate our history, our heritage, our culture, and our own authentic voice. And I'm your host, Alexander Evans, and my co-host, Amari Johnson. I'm digging that thing.
I do appreciate it. African fly, always.
There you go. Rhetoric.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts when you hear that word?
A big word is a big word used to really just talk about, talking junk. You know what I mean? Rhetoric is somebody trying to convince you of things that they ain't got no business trying to convince you of. What do you think?
We call it smack, talking trash, talking loud, ain't saying nothing. But I think also when it comes to rhetoric, people pontificate without knowing anything, right? So people think just because they have everybody got an opinion. But like they say, everybody ain't, a call to their facts, or whatever it says, right? Entitled to their facts, right? So I think now that we give people too much credence, I think now we conflate things and we give people too much credit. Because people think I can come to, a gunfight with a knife, meaning having information so we can have conversation, so we can enlighten and encourage people, you know what I'm saying, or educate.
I think the issue is not that everybody has an opinion.
You're
the
right.
issue that is everybody has an internet connection so they can share that opinion, which really ties into, I think, not only obviously the political climate, but the cultural climate of the particular moment. Man, like you've got folks who are really trying to push off opinions as facts and convince people of things that are not based in any reality. So here's an example of something that I saw is like particularly dangerous. The other day I was watching your president on one of the news networks.
My president?
Certainly, and he said, and he was talking about the pipeline, right? The Dakota Access Pipeline, and what he was saying was, he said, it's amazing. For other things, I get all kinds of pushback, but we haven't had any calls about people. Everybody's pleased with this, right? Which is a bold-faced lie, but what he's doing is using his position to establish the narrative. Now, this is classic dictator moves, right? But when we talk about rhetoric within the context of history, dictators have used rhetoric to sort of push over ideas that maybe everybody didn't believe in, but they were told that everybody believed it, so they went along with the flow. So yeah, rhetoric is definitely alive and well, and it's around us all the time, at all times. You know what?
Now there's this reality universe, right? Where now people say they just don't call people liars. They just say alternative facts.
Oh, yeah.
Now, what was alternative when you talking and there's a lie when I'm telling it? So, I mean, you're right. We have to start calling things as they are. We have to start being truth bearers in this system, as well as the Dakota Pipeline. But here's the interesting thing. You don't see a lot of TV about that.
Of course not.
And there are a lot of people out there protesting in a diplomatic way with their lives at stake, but you really don't see that every day. Sometimes they distract us with nonsense instead of focusing on how that's going to impact that environment through eminent domain of those people who've been there a long time and just brushing them aside as if they're insignificant.
Certainly. I mean, it goes deep and deep and deep, and we're about to go even deeper because we're joined today by Dr. Terry Nance, who is a professor of communications with a focus on rhetoric, and she's going to clarify, what exactly rhetoric it is, and what exactly rhetoric is, and how it's at play in this particular political climate. When we come back on 28 Days and Beyond.
But isn't it un-American and wrong to discriminate against people based on their religion?
But Jimmy, the problem, I'm for it, but look, we have people coming into our country that are looking to do tremendous harm. You look at look at Parris, look at what happened in Parris. I mean, these people, they did not come from Sweden, okay? Look at what happened in Paris. Look at what happened last week in California with 14 people dead, other people going to die. They're so badly injured. I mean, we have a real problem. There's a tremendous hatred out there. And what I want to do is find out you can't solve a problem until you find out what's the root cause. And I want to find out what is the problem, what's going on. And it's temporary. I've had so many people call me and say thank you. Now, if you remember, when I did that a week ago, it was like bedlam. All of a sudden, and you watch last night and you see people talking, they're saying, well, Trump has a point. We have to get down to the problem. The people that are friends of mine, they called, they said, Donald, you've done us a tremendous service because we do have a problem and we have to find out.
Those may have been crank calls. Those may have been crank calls.
One of the things I find fascinating about Donald Trump is the way he uses language differently than other candidates for political office, especially President of the United States. Whereas his opponents and the political class in general seem hyper aware that their words will be picked apart and used against them, Trump willfully disregards this fact. As a lifelong salesman, he has a huckster's knack for selling a feeling, even if the ideas and facts that underscore it are spurious, racist, or just plain incomprehensible. So I thought it would be illuminating to look at a Trump answer to a simple question. In this case, Jimmy Kimmel asking Trump whether or not it's wrong to discriminate against people based on their religion, referring to Trump's proposal to temporarily ban all Muslims from entering the United States.
We're back with 28 Days and Beyond, and on the set with us, we have Dr. Terry Nance. Welcome to the set.
Good to be back.
Can you give us the guru of rhetoric, the historian of rhetoric?
Hardly.
Okay, just setting it up. Can you give us the operational definition of what rhetoric is?
I certainly can. Most people would go back to the ancient Greeks, and Plato would tell us that rhetoric is the art of winning the soul through discourse. Aristotle would tell us that it is the art of finding all of the available means of persuasion in a given instance. And already you can see in that definition of rhetoric how it differs from what you were first saying rhetoric was. Like intentionally deceptive. But what's interesting is that your notion of that goes all the way also back to ancient Greece. And probably you might have heard of the sophists. And you say, pure sophistry. Well, I have to tell you, sophists got a bad rap. Because essentially what the sophists were interested in was how it is you could win arguments. And it goes all the way back to, and again, I don't want to get too technical, but this is really interesting when I tell my students about two men by the name of Corax and Tisius. And one time they were just very interested in why people were winning cases. And you have to remember, Greece was not always this platitude of harmony. There was much funny business going on. And so what happened was that there were always disputes about who owned the land or who owned certain property. And there were times that certain people won and certain people lost. Corax and Tisius said, hey, you know what? If we figure out how some people win and some people lose, we'll make some money.
So what's up? What happened?
So they figured out. What they figured out, that it was not simply the assertion of facts, but the laying down of probabilities. So from that, they were able to essentially then offer what they had to clients, right? I talk about it, all Greece was free. We know that wasn't true. You know, it was the folks who had the money, were male and white, but that's all sort of usual. So what they were able to do was to sell their product. Now, Plato, I sort of called him the professor with the patches on the arms, right? He was interested in what? Pure truth, right? The honest truth. Corax and Tisius was saying, hey, we got to win cases.
That money,
And so I don't want to go any further into that example, but when I shared that with students, I said, you have to understand that these were two very interesting and competing ways of thinking about rhetoric.
But over that several thousand, some odd years, that functional definition has been altered a little bit.
Absolutely. So that one of the definitions of rhetoric that I like to talk about is the management of symbols in order to coordinate social action. Now let's think about that for a second. The management of symbol. I'm not just talking about words anymore.
Right.
When I talk about when I'm talking about the management of symbols, it's the management of images. And now, and especially as the medias have changed so much, there's a whole lot I can manage. But look at the last part of that definition by Gerald Hauser. It's to coordinate social action. Not just me, not just you, but social action. So that there's a sense then when we want to step back and look at rhetoric that we have to look at, you're relating it to culture, that's exactly the truth. Because what rhetoric is about is it's about defining a culture. And it's defining the culture by using language to describe and just describe it.
So who gives one the power to define culture that's not theirs? I'm just talking about that now.
When I take the power,
Now, who taking the power? Go ahead. I'm just saying who's taking the power.
So if you think about it, what I call you, the name that I call you, is very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's take black folk. You know we were not originally just called black folk.
No doubt about it.
Right? Ultimately, we were first called, now before you even go to the N-word, we were called property.
Right.
Let's get that right.
Yeah.
And I'm even going to go, before you come up to the word P-R-O-P, however you spell property. I got a PhD and I don't know how to spell
P-R-O-P-E-R-T.
You know what I'm saying.
This is why. Don't worry about it.
But before we were that, how did we get to be that? Somebody
Certainly.
had to say that these brown bodies were so different than these white bodies that they couldn't be human beings. Right? And so that's where we get to all of those, all the age of enlightenment folk,
Back to your two guys, but guess what they can do? We can make money.
There you go.
And that's how.
So when you think about that, and I'll go back to the founding of the country. Now, I know a lot of people know about Thomas Jefferson. I'm not going to hate him. A very interesting guy, and according to Hamilton, he can dance and sing.
Okay.
But
Sally must have taught him.
But here's the point. He was a new age Renaissance man, and he knew the new race literature. He was also a slaveholder, and he was writing, using language.
So he was a master rhetorician, isn't he?
Rhetorician.
Yes, there you go.
Rhetorician. Yeah. He's creating a new culture.
Right.
So what he's got to do is he's got to find the language then that gives him permission to hold slaves.
Certainly.
So if you read, obviously, Notes on the State of Virginia in the second chapter, where he talks about the differences between, men and those Africans, where he talks about the difference in the sweat glands, when he talks about the motives, clearly, and how African women are more closely aligned with the orangutan, right? All of this then says we are right then.
In our actions and our behavior.
Absolutely, and the fact that this also helps our nascent economy is just by and by.
Yeah, right, of course. Look, Dr. Terry Nance, we've already jumped in pretty deep, but when we come back, we're going to go a little bit deeper.
This 220-word, exactly 1 minute answer displays, I think, a range of the things that Trump uses all the time in his speech. The first thing to note is how simple this language is. Of the 220 words, 172, or 78%, are only one syllable, and often they come in a rhythmic series like a volley of jabs ending with one of his buzzwords.
We have to get down to the problem.
39 words, or 17%, are 2 syllables long. Only 4 words have 3 syllables, 3 of which are the word
tremendous, tremendous, tremendous.
And just 2 words are 4 syllables long. California, which he's forced to use because it has less syllables than San Bernardino, and temporary, which he swallows.
And it's temporary. I've had so many people.
This breakdown fits with the study done by the Boston Globe that put all 2016 presidential candidates' announcement speeches through the Flesch-Kincaid readability test to determine their respective grade level rankings. Donald Trump's speech came out at a 4th grade reading level. Now, for reference, Ben Carson came out at 6th grade. Hillary Clinton and Jeb Bush were speaking at an 8th grade reading level. And Bernie Sanders was way up in high school, a sophomore to be exact. Now, this isn't only down to word or syllable choice. It's about sentence construction, too. Trump favors simple sentences like,
we have a real problem. There's a tremendous hatred out there.
Rarely does he use complex sentences or independent clauses. He also favors the second person a lot of the time, addressing listeners directly with commands.
Look at Paris. Look at what happened in Paris. Look at what happened in Paris. Look at what happened last week in California.
Or implicating us in what he's saying as if we've already agreed.
And you watch last night and you see people talking.
He's really good at this, at framing negative response as an overreaction that was subsequently realized as such.
We're back with Dr. Nance, and we're going to dig a little deeper. What are some of the ways that black people was able to control that rhetoric?
I'm so glad you asked me that question, because one of the things that's been on my mind is mass incarceration. And I don't need to go back just to 1960. Let's go back to Ida B. Wells Barnett, when we were talking about lynching in the United States. Girlfriend was so bad, she wrote, some friends of hers were lynched. She not a big woman,
Yeah.
but she had the power of the press, the black press. And she wrote powerfully about what had happened to them. And she called out the people who lynched them. Her life was in danger. And if it was not for some of her friends who put her on a ship to England to save her life, she would not have gone on. Talk about the management of symbols to coordinate, meaning she wrote the red record, right? And in that, we now have to this day a record of all of the folks who were lynched and their so-called reasons why they were lynched over that incredible period following Reconstruction through the beginning of World War I. Now, why do I bring that up? Some of you may know, some of our audience, some of you may know Brian Stevenson and the incredible work that he's doing in the Equal Justice Institute right now. He wrote the book Just Mercy. And one of the things that he is doing is that he is calling our attention to those who have been sentenced to death, in particular, that he wants us to look carefully at what's happened to them. He recently won a Supreme Court ruling that to take another look at those youth who were sentenced to life to life imprisonment, and he got that overturned.
Wow.
Now he is working on so that now that won't happen anymore. Now he's going back and having courts look at men who were now 30, 40 years old, who were incarcerated when they were 15 and 16 years old to life. So in each of those cases, what we saw were single people, but who had the power of the word to mobilize the actions of the community to become involved and to understand what was going on. One last one. Michelle Alexander's powerful book, The New Jim Crow, right, has I think energized the population in understanding what's going on in this prison system. If you remember, you want to go back to the 13th Amendment, and I really will get out of the 19th century, right? But the only way slavery could be continued was what?
As punishment for a crime. Yeah. So, but you know what though? I mean, you mentioned this. There's still a sense that this is, a whisper on a bed of screams, if you will. Everybody's talking nowadays. What are some of the ways that you've seen the rhetoric used in a potentially destructive way in today's society?
I think that this Milo person has done, is a masterful rhetorician, because he has gotten the people who oppose him to advertise for him.
Yeah, okay.
Right? And my husband just recently sent me an article by a marketing person who explained exactly how to do this. He said, you just put out a couple of negative statements, say where you're going to be, and then you rely on the crowd to now do your own advertising for you.
So any press is good press.
So any press becomes good press, and then this marketing manager goes a little bit further, and he hires a couple of people to do some crazy stuff. Right, just a few people, and other people pick it up. So what I am always advocating, especially in my classes, is don't give away your opinion. You got a mind? Listen to arguments. If someone's not making you an argument, and if you want to know what an argument is, I tell people, look for a conclusion and some proofs. And if you just got a conclusion after a conclusion after conclusion, go back and demand some proof. And so that I don't give away your opinion. So if someone is coming at you with a lot of nonsense, I wouldn't even call that rhetoric. That's just nonsense.
I got you.
Right.
Certainly.
And because when I talk about, I teach a course called African American Rhetoric, and I talk about rhetoric as the symbolic construction and reconstruction of the African American community and identity. And what that means is that if you think about who we are as African Americans, that knowledge of who we are was not coded on the DNA. We had to learn from somebody. And when we were property, we learned that we were a cog in a wheel. Right? When you start to learn about yourself, right? When you start to learn about your history, then you learn the words, right? The management of symbol that tells me I am from a race of incredibly resourceful and strong people who said some incredibly wise words at all periods of our history. In my African American rhetoric course, we use a book that's about this thick, and it's writings of African Americans before 1900.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Now, just that graphic, just that symbol is different. I still remember now, I did grow up in the dark ages, but I remember sitting in a class with a white boy who said, "What did black people ever do but invent the peanut?" But here's the sad part. As I was sitting in the class, and I was one of the goody two-shoes. I read everything. I didn't know. I went home and my mother schooled me because she knew.
Well, cotton gin got in the way, but you know.
Right. But the point is that when you don't know, that vacuum, right? Then that creates a vacuum, and other people's meaning, gets instilled into you, so that when we talk about creating an identity, that's why it is so powerful to have an understanding of who you are and who you are within relationship to other people. I'm not here to give an advertisement, but if you have not gone to the movie, I Am Not Your Negro, do not waste any time. Get off the couch, get off the chair, go and see it now, because James Baldwin so eloquently challenges the notions of African Americans as passive, as willing to accept anything. And he says very clearly that we are a people who have endured because of our intelligence, not simply because of our brawn. So that's a very powerful message and statement that needs to come to people, because I think that's what we're looking for. That's what's missing in our lives, is meaning. We've got lots of verbiage going around, it's all over. But what is significant? What tells me not only who I am now, but where I'm going in the future? That's what we're looking for. Read Malcolm X. Right. As you read his words, he knew that there was that hunger. First in Norfolk prison where he was, and then when he took to the streets of New York. That's why people loved him so much, because he filled that meaning gap in their lives. And that's what rhetoric does.
Dr. Terry Nance, we're going to have to take a pause there, but when we come back, we'll have our final thoughts.
If you remember, when I did that a week ago, it was like bedlam. All of a sudden, and you watch last night, and you see people talking, they're saying, well, Trump has a point. We have to get down to the problem.
Maybe the most important technique Trump utilizes, and he does this more than anyone I've ever heard, is ending his sentences with strong, punchy words. A lot of times he'll rearrange the beginning of a sentence awkwardly so that he can end strong. For example, here, it would probably be more natural to say, you can't solve a problem until you find out what the root cause is. But he brings the is forward to end on root cause. He does the same here. And it looks like that's what he was about to do at the end before Kimmel cuts him off. These final words are crucial for Trump. They're pointed and taken together sketch the theme of the entire answer.
Harm, dead, die, badly injured, problem, root cause, thank you, bedlam, point, problem, service, problem.
In some sense, it's these words that audiences remember, especially when the rest of his speech is incoherent. Like the best salesman, Trump keeps it simple. He repeats a lot.
We have a real problem. What is the problem? We do have a problem. We have to get down to the problem.
And he uses his favorite words over and over.
Tremendous, tremendous, tremendous service.
And he always seems to have friends who are part of the group that he's currently insulting, calling him up and thanking him for the privilege.
Many of them called me and they said, Donald, you're right. We have a problem. I mean, look, there is a problem.
Donald Trump knows when to sound incredulous or forceful. He has good comedic instinct. You could even call him witty. But you can't call him smart or well-informed. The best salesman could sell you a TV without knowing anything about it, because the TV isn't what matters. What matters is you. And if you are an American citizen who, for years, has listened to politicians sound sophisticated while accomplishing nothing, you might just be primed for something that is everything they are not. But the next time you feel like Donald Trump has a point, do yourself a favor and look at his words.
We back with 28 Days with our final thoughts, man. We couldn't wait to get back to this segment. Dr. Nance, what are some of the ways that we can help deconstruct how people have been conditioned on how to view themselves with all the things that you talked about earlier?
When I think about the answer to that question, I'm reminded of the last chapter of Cornel West's book, Race Matters, in which he talks about nihilism is the greatest threat facing the African American community. When did he write that book? 20, 30 years ago?
Early 90s, I think.
Early 90s? That is so true today. I think that the direct answer to your question is to help people find hope again. And I think that hope cannot be grounded in late-stage capitalism. It can't be found.
Very interesting.
It cannot be found in the materials that we have on our back or that we are driven. That we have to reconnect people to their internal life. We have to reconnect people to their intelligence. I walked into a group of 5th graders and I told them, "You are intellectuals." I said, "Do you know what that means?" And they thought that it was funny, that it was weird. And I told them that that I want them to think, and and I gave them some kind of math. I gave them a quick math quiz. I said, if I can sell you 6 donuts for $3, but I'll sell you a half dozen for $3.50, what are you going to take? And I said, some of them thought for a minute, but then they got it right. I said, that's just a math example. But it's the power of your brain that will ultimately allow you to have hope in the future. Because as long as we believe that it is the latest gadget that will make us happy, we will never move beyond the point where we are now. And I think that's what the African American community has. We have an ability to take our hope, match it with our faith, with a love of our community to advance us all.
You said something there, and I'm looking at substance and material, right? Material is this, substance of character and intellect. And I believe we have traded some of that things in to validate that we have achieved success. What's your final thoughts? We got 2 seconds left.
And when we do that, that means that we have bought into the symbolic construction of the late stage capitalism that says you are your clothes, that you are your material goods. And that's what we have to fight with our children. And it's hard when they want the latest toys, when they want the latest, garments. But you have to teach them the power of their mind is the most important thing that they have.
We asked for final thoughts and then you busted open a whole new conversation. Dr. Terry Nance, we want to thank you for joining us on 28 Days and Beyond, where we celebrate and reflect on our history, our heritage, and our culture in our own authentic voice. Until next time, peace.